right. Well, that was certainly a game. Welcome in, everybody. Black and Gold Breakdown. Post-game show for the Steelers. Week 2 preseason game against the Bills. Steelers lose 9-3. Don't get in the end zone. They scored 15 points across the first 2 preseason games. So it could be better. Let's put it that way, I suppose. A lot to highlight as negatives, some to talk about as positives. I will start with the negatives because I think that those are the more obvious ones right now. But before I dive into it, if you're not already subscribed to the channel and you're watching this on YouTube, please do so. It would mean a lot to me. And if you are watching and have been subscribed, I appreciate you for doing so. So the negatives. Broderick Jones, let's start there. Woof. That was one of those games where it's kind of burned the tape. And I understand why people are really concerned, but at the same time, Broderick looked pretty solid last year. This is one game in the preseason. Understandable to be concerned after a performance like that where he got bullied by Greg Rousseau outright on 2 reps that were just abysmal. So, there's obvious concern there, and he obviously did not have a good game. I don't think, however, that automatically means that when Fatanu comes back that Jones should be on the bench and start Dan Moore. I think that's a little bit premature. And I also think that a lot of this is the end product of constantly flip-flopping this guy around throughout the course of the summer. If you're playing a guy out of position, eventually it's going to catch up. If you constantly flip-flop a guy around where, okay, now, say you start him at the right side, now he's got to go to the left side. Okay, footwork's going to be different, and that could throw somebody off. Okay, put him back on the right side, same situation. So not all of this falls at the feet of Broderick Jones. I think he can be a solid player. And we saw last year, he was a really solid player. The offensive line got much better, especially in the run game, when he became a starter. So I'm not going to pencil, a preseason performance in August as the downfall of Broderick Jones, but it is something, to obviously keep an eye on going forward if he doesn't get better. And like I said, I don't think, that when Troy Fatanu gets back that you all of a sudden say, okay, Broderick Jones, you're now the backup to Dan Moore. I think that would be pretty premature. I think that you put Jones out there as left tackle, Fatanu at right tackle, and if Broderick Jones struggles and you want to go to Dan Moore, then okay. But I don't think that, a bad performance in a preseason game dictates what you should do with Broderick Jones. And again, a lot of this, I think, boils down to the Steelers' mismanagement of the offensive line because it has been very badly mismanaged. The offensive line as a whole wasn't good. And I know we single out Broderick for obvious reasons because of 2-3 very bad reps. But the offensive line as a whole was bad. Wilson and Fields were sacked 4 times. The Bills' defensive line ate them alive, especially the first unit. That was less than optimal. You didn't want to see that. And even, the second, third string units, Fields is running for his life majority of the time. And running the ball, if you take away Justin Fields' scrambles, they ran the ball 19 times for 62 yards. It's about 3.3 yards per carry. That ain't going to get the job done. So overall, the offensive line looked bad, and I think that the struggles in the offensive line largely compromised anything that you wanted to see out of Russell Wilson. Although I will say about Russell Wilson, played kind of timid, pretty conservative. He did have one nice throw to Van Jefferson over the middle of the field on the possession where the Steelers missed a field goal. So, I mean, there were some nice things there. The ball to George Pickens down the sideline, which, by the way, George Pickens has that Marvin Harrison gene where if he gets a hand on it, he's catching it. And he's able to adjust his body in every angle that you need him to make spectacular catches. And he continues to prove that week in and week out. So There were some things that Russ did that was pretty good. I think he went 4 for 4 for like 16 yards. Like it was just very just timid, conservative style of play. And so, again, a lot of that was somewhat compromised by an offensive line that didn't play well. And I understand that. But, I thought that we would see a little bit more out of Russ in this game. And, at least test some stuff downfield. I'll also go back and pull up his final stats because I do want to see what he ended up going for the evening. So on the night, Russell Wilson, 8 of 10, 47 yards, was sacked 3 times for a loss of 21 total yards. So not not great. You're going 8 of 10, that's good. But 4.7 yards per attempt, not great. I mean, how we clowned Kenny Pickett for his yards per attempt with Philadelphia in the preseason, and this just wasn't very good if we're being real. Fields goes 11 of 17, 92 yards, 42 yards on the ground. And again, I think Fields did a lot of good stuff. I think there was a lot that was still left on the field. The 4th and 2 play where he kept it on the read option. I think if he I think it was Aaron Shamplin that was in there with him. If he gives it to Shamplin, it's probably a first down. So he may have predetermined that one. There's a few reads that he missed. I know that people are going to point to the overthrown touchdown pass or call it an overthrown touchdown pass. If you watch the play back, the receiver whose name is escaping me right now, I don't know if he had TJ Luther. He very clearly stopped running and then tried running again. And credit to him, he launched like he had just jumped off a trampoline. So that was fun. But yeah, the throw in the end zone to TJ Luther, he very clearly stops running. Had he kept running, he probably has a much better chance at catching it. So I can't put that one entirely on Fields. I thought Fields looked fine. Could have been better. Could have been worse. Similar to last week where obviously we saw more of him this week, which is good. But we saw him use his legs more, which was a welcome sight because that's the one thing that, he really has on Russell Wilson is that Justin Fields can do that. I think his longest run on the night was 20 yards. Again, 8 carries for 42 yards, averaged over 5 yards a carry. I mean, if you have a quarterback that can do that, I just don't see why you would go with, and again, I'm not anti-Russell Wilson by any means. I'm pro whatever quarterback is in there and can help the Steelers win. I just think that Fields gives you more at this point, especially with his ability to scramble. So overall, I think Fields played well, but again, some things left on the field, a few reads I didn't love, a few missed opportunities as well. But a lot of these issues can be chalked up to an offensive line that didn't have a good night. So, and Arthur Smith, obviously the Steelers aren't going to, unveil their entire offense in the preseason. But again, I would have liked to see a little bit more aggression. Especially with these two guys where Kyle Allen didn't even see the field this week. They only played Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. So if you're going to do that, hell, let them uncork it a few times. And again, we saw Wilson do it once to George Pickens, but I would have liked to seen a little bit more aggression from Arthur Smith in his play calling. So I'll get into some comments real quick before I talk about the stuff I did like. Concepts, Killebrew picked off Mitch, classic Mitch. But yeah, I mean, shout out Miles Killebrew, special teams all-pro. Nice to see him making plays on D. Nick Herbig looks ready to go. Worried about Broderick Jones, though. Nick Herbig could start for so many teams across the league. I'm trying to think of a team that doesn't really have a pass rusher. I tell you what, he could start for the Bills. I think that you can make the argument that he's better than AJ Epinesa or Greg Rousseau. Now, Greg Rousseau just bullied Broderick Jones for an evening, so it's probably not the best example. But I think Nick Herbig could start for the Bills. What other team doesn't have a pass rusher? Nick Herbig could start for the Panthers today. There's plenty of teams that don't really have. The Cardinals could probably be another one. A lot of teams that don't have like a go-to pass rusher right now that he could start for. It just so happens that he plays behind T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith. So that kind of prevents that. He could probably start in Jacksonville, opposite of Joshua Hines-Allen. But yeah, love Nick Herbig. JF1 probably QB1, right? Eventually he will be. He's not going to start the season as the starter. I would bet any amount of money they're going to have Russ start the season as the starter. He'll start at least the first 2 games, and then from there we'll see. But I think Wilson will start the season as the starter. They'll go with Fields at some point. I would say this, sooner rather than later. You know, around like once they made the Fields trade, you know, from there until, you know, the start of training camp, I would have said, okay, Wilson will probably start the first half of the season. They'll be hovering around 500 or so. They'll give the keys to Fields. Now I would say Wilson's guaranteed, in my mind, to start the first 2 games at least. After that, it's kind of up in the air. So I'll say probably like the first month or so, I would say Wilson. After that, maybe it'll be Fields. But I do think he'll start eventually. Everyone's talking about how Justin put up 0 points on a backup Bills defense, but nobody's talking about how horrid Pittsburgh's wide receivers were. If George Pickens gets hurt, it's wraps. Yeah. And this is a situation where if you're Omar Khan, you see that, I would call the 49ers and be like, all right, I'll give you, what do you want? Like, I know that they've probably played hardball in terms of, hey, we're the only team that he wants to play for outside of you guys. So, you know, we don't have to, you know, give you a ginormous haul. But if you're the Steelers and you see that, I mean, in a trade situation, that swings a lot of momentum back to the 49ers where they're like, look, you have no receivers whatsoever. So we're not just going to give them to you for what you're offering. If you really want them, you're going to give us more. So if anything, yeah, that helps the 49ers case for a Brandon Ayuk trade. Things I did like. Yeah, we already talked about Nick Herbig. He's great. Larry Ogunjobi had a nice game. He had a run stop and was part of a group that sacked Trubisky again, because Herbig had 1 sack, and then it went, I think, Ogunjobi, Herbig, and then Keanu Benton finished off Trubisky later on. Keanu Benton's going to be a dog this year. I hope he has a nice breakout year. Other things I like. Mark Robinson, he had a nice game. He's kind of the forgotten linebacker on the Steelers, but he led them in tackles tonight. He had a good tackle on Trubisky to prevent a first down, and he flew down the field on punt coverage to prevent any sort of punt return. So overall, I liked what Mark Robinson did. Good for Mark Robinson. Who else had it? Des Fitzpatrick had 2 catches. He was the one who made that catch on the sideline after Fields broke free of a sack and threw it to the sideline for a first down. Des Fitzpatrick's the one who caught that. The Steelers really seem to like that play action pass. The play action pass where they have Van Jefferson run a deep in. That worked again this week. This time Russell Wilson threw it to him. So Van Jefferson seems to be getting better as time goes on. Connor Hayward, he had 2 catches for 20 yards, a 15-yarder where he leaped over a Bills defender. That was pretty rad. Good for Connor Hayward. Scotty Miller had 3 catches again. He had 3 catches last week. I was kind of scrolling. Oh, Cam Johnston. How could I forget Cam Johnston? He had 3 punts of over 60 yards. He averaged 57 yards a punt. He was one of my favorite guys to talk to after practice during OTAs and training or minicamp. And he has been booting the piss out of footballs. So good for Cam Johnston. He's such a massive upgrade over what they had in Presley Harvin. So happy to see that. Ryan Watts had 6 tackles. So good for the rookie Ryan Watts. I am a little bit concerned about Peyton Wilson. He left the game. They tested him for a concussion. So he went down. Peyton Wilson just plays with such a beautiful violence. That's the best way I can describe it. If you like wrestling, Peyton Wilson would be a very good addition to the Blackpool Combat Club. And I just love the way he plays the game. He tackled, I think it was Ray Davis, and he just threw him to the ground like he was a bale of hay. But I do think that there's a part of him that might go a little bit too hard sometimes, where you have plays where you could injure yourself. So I don't want to say reel him in or anything like that, because he plays the game in a way that I love. But he did leave and got evaluated for a concussion. Hopefully it's nothing serious. And again, in a 9-3 preseason game, there's not a whole lot to love. You try to look for some individual performances. The starting defense had a handful of individual performances that were good, and then the second team did as well. But again, a lot of these guys are going to be vying for position. I think that Thomas Graham actually had a relatively good game. He had a pass deflection. He had a really nice read on a Trubisky pass to, I think it was Quentin Morris, the tight end. Had he got there a half second earlier, he picks it off. So it was a good read. He just got there a little bit late. And I believe Thomas Graham got the start tonight at nickel because Beanie Bishop didn't play. So we'll see if he's dealing with anything like serious. Hopefully it doesn't keep him out long term. Darius Rush had a pass breakup in the end zone where I would have liked to see him get his head around a little bit quicker, because he didn't quite get his head all the way around, but he just kind of stuck his hands in the air once he saw the receiver going for the ball, didn't make contact with them, or didn't make enough contact to warrant a pass interference. So that was a good play by Darius Rush, which is good to see. Put up a field goal in 1 minute drill. Yeah, that's a good shout. Justin Fields did have a very good drive to close out the first half. Again, I talked about Arthur Smith. He ran a draw play with 45 seconds left, and I didn't. Again, what was the plan here offensively for Arthur Smith? It just felt like a really weirdly called game. What's going on, Rob? Thanks for tuning in. Who was to blame on the missed touchdown pass, wide receiver or quarterback? Both could have been better, but who was it? TJ Shorter was his name. Very much a depth guy. TJ Luther, sorry. TJ Luther, if you go back and watch the play, and it'll look better in the all-22, he definitely hesitates once he gets toward the goal line and then tries to speed back up to catch up with the ball. That's why he jumps for it. He jumps high, very high. But had he kept running, he would have had a much better chance at hauling it in. So the ball could have probably been a little bit better placed by Fields, but if Luther keeps running, he probably catches it if he extends. So I would say more so on Luther, but it wasn't a perfect throw by Fields. I've heard the wideout stopped, but of course you could play. Yeah, no, it's the wideout. Yeah, TJ Luther definitely could have kept running. So we'll see. So I would say overall, I'm not going to freak out, because last year, this time we were talking about, oh man, the Steelers are going to be awesome. They scored 5 touchdowns in 5 preseason drives. They're going to be great offensively, and then they stunk. It's new quarterbacks, new offense. There's a lot of turnover. By the way, the Bills last week, the team that they just played lost 33-6 to the Bears. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the Bills are going to be better than the Bears. So it's nothing to worry frantically about. Do you want to see it get cleaned up? Yeah, absolutely. But if the preseason dictated how things went, then we wouldn't have the story of the 2023 Steelers. The Steelers last year would have went 17-0 and scored a touchdown on every drive. So I'm optimistic, cautiously optimistic, I would say. But the reason I'm optimistic at all, and it's the same reason I've been optimistic all offseason, and the same reason that I'm going to continue to be, is because the Steelers last year won 10 games where legitimately you could make a legitimate argument that Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky are currently the two worst quarterbacks in football. And the Steelers had winning records over the past 2 years with them starting the vast majority of their games. I don't think Russell Wilson or Justin Fields are going to necessarily set the world on fire. I think Justin Fields has a better chance of doing it because he's more dynamic athletically. But I don't think either of them are going to be, top 15 quarterbacks. But as I've said 1 billion times, they don't need them to be that. Would you like them to be that? Yeah, of course. But the defense looks really good. And if the defense is really good and the offense is just fine, then they're going to be fine. I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender. Do I think that they can maybe win a playoff game? Yeah, I think that they can win a playoff game. I think that they could be the Giants of the 2022 Giants. I think that they could be them, where they beat a team in the wild card round and then probably get destroyed in the divisional round by a team with like an actual quarterback. And again, don't think they're a Super Bowl contender whatsoever. But are they better than what they were last year? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, they're better than what they were last year. And what they were last year was a 10-win team that got into the playoffs. So I think that they can at least repeat that, and then we'll see where it goes from there. But, a lot to clean up as of right now. But there's still some good put on display in terms of defensively especially. Keanu Benton's going to be a dog. Nick Herbig's a dog. I think Patrick Queen looked really fast toward the ball. So overall, especially defensively, there's a lot to be, excited about for that side of the ball. But again, you want to see the passing game get a little bit more in tune. I want to see the run game get a little bit more in tune as well. The offensive line is my biggest concern right now. But again, if results in August always translated to the regular season, then the Steelers would have been the best team in football last year. Spoiler alert, they weren't. So, still got 3 weeks to clean all this stuff up. I'm not too worried. Not too worried. I still think that they can be, a 10-ish win team that hovers around the playoff picture, gets in as a 7 or 6 seed, depending on who they play, can eke out a win. And then if they do win a playoff game, get beat probably pretty handedly in the division round. Again, depends on who they play. But it's my overall thoughts from this. And they'll close out the preseason next week against Detroit. I wouldn't expect any of the defensive starters to play in that game. I think it's going to be largely backups throughout. I would expect the offensive starters, though, to get some reps because they very clearly need it. Especially the offensive line. And I would assume we see Wilson and Fields for probably the first half. Maybe Wilson gets a quarter, Fields gets a quarter, and then they go Kyle Allen and maybe a little bit of John Rice Plumlee. So that's my overall thoughts, at least. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do so. Monday, a little bit of programming update. Monday on the Pump Fake, Greg Rosenthal will be joining me. We'll be going over teams, players that we are very bullish on going into this season. Maybe make a little bit of a bold takes, I guess is kind of the better way to put that. So Greg Rosenthal of NFL Daily, one of the very best in the industry today, will be joining me on Monday. That'll be a lot of fun for the Pump Fake. Always love doing stuff with Greg. He's one of the best. So that'll be a lot of fun. Be sure to tune in for that. When are we doing that? 3 Eastern on Monday. So set your calendars, mark your timers. Or mark your calendars, set your timers. I'm pretty sure that's the correct version of that saying. So that'll be a good show. Make sure to tune in for that. Go back and listen to the last episode of the Pump Fake as well. Me and Doug Farrar, my good friend, good good friend, good mentor, Doug Farrar was on the last episode with me. What did we talk about? What did we talk about on the last episode of the Pump Fake? I don't necessarily remember. Oh, preseason overreactions. That's what it was. We talked a little bit about Caleb Williams, who, by the way, had a really nice game today for the Bears. Talked about the Vikings, who now will be without J.J. McCarthy for the year. Talked about other rookie quarterbacks. So Bo Nix, a little bit of Jaden Daniels. So heavy focus on rookie quarterbacks in the last episode of the Pump Fake. Go and listen to that. A lot of fun with Doug Farrar. And again, Monday with Greg Rosenthal on the Pump Fake of NFL Daily. Again, Greg, one of the absolute best. So can't wait to do that with him. Always enjoy doing stuff with Greg. And we're getting closer, folks. Getting closer. And I can't wait for the NFL season to get here. And as always, I appreciate you guys tuning in for all the Steelers content, all the NFL content. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do so. Hold on, we got to do the subscriber count like we do every show. 1,229. And again, makes my little heart happy because started doing this really 4 months ago around draft time, and you guys just really started tuning in. So that much subs in that amount of time makes me very happy. So thank you guys for tuning in. And keep tuning in for the Pump Fake, for the Black and Gold Breakdown. I think during the season, like I said, for Black and Gold Breakdown, we're going to do 2 a week. So we'll do, one before the game, one after the game. Occasionally we might do one midweek, but, it's the busy life of an NFL writer. So I'll try to do my best with that. I'm going to do two episodes of the Pump Fake a week as well. So a lot of content during the regular season, and I'm gearing up for that. So make sure you subscribe for all of that coming from September to February. And then even when the off season is intact, you'll get reports from me from the Senior Bowl in Mobile, from the Combine in Indianapolis in March. So all the fun stuff throughout the year. And I appreciate y'all for tuning in as always. Have a good night and talk to you soon. Enjoy. And thank you so much for tuning in. Take care.